Viewer discretion is advised. This episode contains subject matter which may be difficult for some viewers. Hey guys, Jared here. Today we'll be uncovering some of the world's deadliest flash floods in recent times. Now, we couldn't cover them all, but we'll be focusing on a handful, each with unique conditions and horrific consequences. From devastation in Texas, monsoons in India, to mudslides in Venezuela, we'll see what you'd need to do to survive them. Whether you're in your basement, your car, or just try not to get swept away, how do you stay breathing when you're up against weather's #1 killer? What controversial and fatal mistake led to the tragedy at Camp Mystic? Why did a dam malfunction cause one of the deadliest disasters in Italy's history? And how did an army use flooding as a deadly weapon? So grab a life jacket or a life preserver and settle in, because these stories are terrifying. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Jerry Dworkin, who works with life-saving resources and serves as a consultant in aquatic safety and water rescue. We talked about survival tips for a flooding situation.
And if you're trying to stand up in moving water, it only takes 6 inches of water to knock you off your feet.
For those of you in a car thinking you're all set, you may want to think twice before driving through flooded waters.
If your vehicle does end up in the water and the water is deep, you need to get out of that vehicle as soon as possible. It only takes 12 inches of water to float a vehicle off its wheels, and you lose total control.
Flash floods have many causes. They're usually a result of heavy rainfall, but beyond that, they can be triggered by tsunamis, landslides, or human negligence. Yeah, we'll touch on that later. And believe it or not, even droughts and wildfires have been known to cause them.
We've had a tremendously dry summer here in Maine. What's going to happen basically if we get a heavy deluge of rain, it's not going to get soaked into the ground because the ground has become hard clay. So we have a very imminent possibility for flash flooding should it occur here.
Aside from the obvious risks of drowning, flash floods can also carry heavy debris, such as trees, cars, boulders, and sometimes entire houses. So you're at risk of being pummeled in the water. Throw in down power lines, and you don't have to worry about getting electrocuted. There's also the risk of contaminated water from sewage leaks, dead animals, and a fast-moving stew of anything and everything. And if you think you're a strong swimmer, I have some bad news for you. The rate at which some currents move can take anyone under. Unlike other natural disasters, flash floods are a little harder to predict. And by the time you realize what's happening, you really don't have much time to react. Even with protocols in place, we don't really know how to handle situations until they happen. And tragically, that's what led to the heartbreaking outcome in Texas in July 2025. If you ever find yourself stranded or lost in a flash flood, communication can be your most important lifeline. And sometimes without internet or cell service available, all you have left between you and a rescue is your voice, or an emergency radio. That's why our sponsor, Ham Radio Prep, is here to help. They have a fast and easy ham radio course online to get you licensed and up and running with your own equipment. They'll teach you how to operate a ham radio in just a few hours, even if you're a complete beginner like me. You copy? And guys, this is the real deal. Not some emergency radio you bought online that actually uses cell towers. Having a ham radio and knowing how to use it is one of the best ways you can prep for any emergency as a survivalist. Ham radio is the only way to communicate worldwide with your own equipment. If you want to get started, scan the QR code or visit hamradioprep.com and use our code HOWTOSURVIVE at checkout to save an additional 10% on your purchase when you sign up today. Over and out. Now, back to the show.
My son and I were walking, and I thought it was a mannequin. It was a little boy, about 8 or 10 years old, and he was dead. So You
saw that this morning?
Yes.
It was supposed to be a day to celebrate America's independence. But in the early morning of July 4th, 2025, Central Texas was hit by heavy rain, triggering one of the country's deadliest flooding events. This was caused by both Tropical Storm Barry and Hurricane Flossie, which dropped a month's worth of rain in just a few hours. It was a 1 in 1,000 year rain event. A flash flood warning was issued the day before, and 3 hours before the rain started, the warning escalated to a full-scale flash flood emergency. Within an hour and a half, The Guadalupe River rose 32.5 feet, sending fast-moving water through 6 counties. This all led to a death toll of 137, and an estimated $20 billion price tag for rescue efforts, property damage, and economic losses. Kerr County in particular was hit the hardest, where 119 people lost their lives. Many of those victims were from Camp Mystic, an all-girls camp that was situated right beside the river.
I was with my campers in the middle of the night. It was about 1:30 in the morning, and rain just kind of started coming through our windows. I woke my girls up, told them to close the windows, and then the power just went out. All the fans turned off.
At the time of the floods, Camp Mystic had over 500 campers and 100 staff on site at their Guadalupe and Cypress Lake locations. Despite being in a highly flood-prone zone, some reports mentioned that the camp's flood warning system was shut down in 1999, after it was deemed unreliable. Although attempts to install a new warning system were made, they never came to fruition due to limited budgets and a lack of overall support from locals and the state. It also didn't help that Kerr County didn't have an outdoor siren system to warn residents of potential flooding. When cell towers and power lines go down, people are left in the dark, literally. The camp also made some questionable decisions years earlier, which likely made the situation even more catastrophic. More on that later. Both campers and staff were required to turn in their phones on day 1, which means they weren't aware of the flood warnings leading up to the tragedy. Their only form of communication was walkie-talkies.
People from different cabins started coming to our porch and yelling wake up and go to rec hall because there's a flood. So we had to take a blanket, a pillow, a water bottle, and a flashlight. And then we went to rec hall, and then we had to go on the second floor because it was coming in.
The camp's owner, Richard Eastland, received an emergency flood warning on his phone at 1:14 a.m. But rather than making the call to evacuate the campers and staff, he and his family members on site decided to wait and assess the risks first.
If the environmentalists, if the weather people feel that the signs are there, the weather patterns are there for flash flooding, and put out a flash flood watch or warning, take heed and take the appropriate action.
Then, at 2:30 a.m., as heavy rain began to fall, Eastland sprang into action, helping some of the younger campers into his truck. But like I said before, being in a vehicle isn't always your best bet during a flood.
As far as vehicles, when you come across a flooded roadway, you have no idea what the integrity of the roadway is underneath that water, nor do you have any idea how deep that water is. So when you see signs that say things like, turn around, don't drown, take heed and turn around, don't try to go through them.
Sadly, while trying to save his campers, Eastland got swept away in the river current. In total, 27 campers and staff lost their lives. All the bodies were recovered with the exception of an 8-year-old who's still missing.
And Aiden said, hey, I've got to go. I've got to help Ella and Reese. So he gave the phone to Joyce Catherine. Joyce Catherine said, they just got washed away. And then a few seconds later, the phone went dead.
Just 2 days before the incident, the state of Texas inspected the campgrounds and found no health or safety violations. But it's important to mention that in 2013, the camp fought to have its grounds removed from FEMA's special flood hazard area, which helped reduce insurance and renovation costs.
I would think that at a camp for young people, they would be particularly cautious, certainly about the risk of flooding.
This wasn't an accident. This was complacency, and it is 100% preventable.
Many parents and families of the bereaved are pursuing legal action against Camp Mystic, with trials involving wrongful death lawsuits still going on today. We hope they get the justice and closure they deserve. If you ever find yourself in a flash flood like the one in Texas, the rising water should not be your only concern. It's what's inside the water.
You're going to be facing not only a large and fast-moving volume of water, but you've also got a lot of debris flowing down as well. That's why you've got to get to the high ground as quickly as you can. Other considerations is the water is going to be contaminated. And if you're in a roadway, things like manhole covers, they will have been removed from the force of the water. You could be walking on the road and all of a sudden you go through a manhole.
As Jerry said, get to higher ground immediately, even if it's in your attic. But bring an axe with you if you can.
An attic would be fine on the condition that you have the ability to knock out a vent, knock out a wall, knock out a window in order to signal for help. But if there's no way for you to get fresh air, no way for you to signal for help or self-rescue yourself from that attic, then I would not recommend going up there.
Try not to swallow any of the flood water either. And if you can, find clean drinking water quickly to avoid dehydration. Heavy rainfall can lead to flash flooding within hours. But when you add melting glaciers to the mix, things can turn deadly in minutes. In June 2013, a cloudburst brought heavy rainfall to the Indian state of Uttarakhand, which sits just below the Himalayan mountains. It brought nearly 400% more rain than what was considered normal during the monsoon season. But it wasn't just the rain the state had to contend with. Some reports suggest meltwater from the Chorabari Glacier contributed to the chaos. This was all a recipe for extremely heavy flooding in the area. Sadly, the momentum of water rushing down from the mountains triggered one of the most devastating landslides in modern history. At the same time, hundreds of thousands of pilgrims came to the area for an annual tradition that includes visiting historic sites. Naturally, things turned deadly quickly. The rapids took down homes, roads, and thousands of people. Over 6,500 were presumed to be killed in the disaster. There was a total of $5 billion in damages, with hundreds of thousands needing to be rescued. Ram Karan Beniwal went on the pilgrimage with his wife, brothers, and their wives. Sadly, he was the only one who made it out alive.
वाले ने एयरफोर्स वाले फिर उन्होंने शुरू कर दिया 4 दिन तक तो कोई नहीं आया आदमी फिर मैं देहरादून हॉस्पिटल आया देहरादून हॉस्पिटल में रहा तो वहां से फिर संपर्क हुआ.
The only way out was by helicopter, and by the time it reached Beniwal, he'd seen numerous people once clinging to trees die from starvation, dehydration, or the cold.
There was nothing but death in front of us, says his friend Gurjeet Singh. Now that we've got out, we feel like we've got a second life.
Once again, drowning should not be your only concern in a flash flood. Hypothermia can kill you in under an hour if you aren't careful. Finding shelter and staying warm is key. The Himalayan region had another deadly flood quite recently in August 2025. Yet again, a cloudburst triggered heavy rain and glacier melting, causing the Kurganga River to overflow. While it wasn't as brutal as the 2013 floods, it managed to kill 5 people, with 100 still missing. In a situation like this, where getting to high ground is difficult, how you swim is important.
If you get caught up in the water, the best position you can be in would be on your back, floating downstream with your feet downstream in front of you, so you can push off and so forth. But if you are caught in a flash flood, again, feet downstream, on your back, looking for help, trying to swim your way diagonally to shore, and keep you safe as best you can.
As we've seen, landslides can cause significant damage when coupled with flooding. But our next story takes this to a whole other level. A man-made wave that destroyed several villages in an instant. Just north of Venice, in the municipality of Erto e Caso, stands the Vajont Dam. Nestled by a reservoir in Monte Toc, it began construction in the mid-50s and was completed in the early 60s. At the time, it was the world's highest dam, built to supply hydroelectric power to northeastern Italy. Despite warnings from locals and geological reports highlighting the potential dangers of landslides, construction continued as planned. After a few minor landslides into the water above the dam, technicians decided to lower the water levels to prevent a disaster. What they didn't account for was a major landslide. On October 9th, 1963, an estimated 9.5 billion square feet of rock fell into the lake above, triggering an explosion of water. The result? 2 massive waves headed in opposite directions. One wiped out farms, homes, and people living along the shore. The other wave exploded over the top of the dam, reaching heights of up to 820 feet, and crashed down in the valley below. It killed an estimated 2,000 people and destroyed 5 villages, including Longarone.
Longarone was not there anymore. They could see that Longarone didn't exist anymore. There was only mud and water and ruins and no life at all.
It was considered one of the worst man-made disasters of all time. Even though officials had been warned and locals had heard the sounds of the mountain groaning, no one was advised to evacuate.
No one had been warned in Longarone. There were no official warnings. There were just the warnings coming from the mountain.
Surviving a situation like this requires you to act on instinct. If you live near a dam and you can hear it shifting or see cracks, evacuate immediately. Don't wait for an official evacuation notice. As we saw in this case, it may not come at all. Our next story highlights the dangers of mixing torrential rain with mountains of mud. Before we dive into that, if you're enjoying the show, hit like and subscribe for more amazing survival content. In December 1999, the state of Vargas in Venezuela was hit by record rainfall. Located at the base of the Cordillera de la Costa Mountains, the area was prone to flooding and landslides. But this incident was unlike anything they'd ever dealt with before.
The neighbors were screaming for help, and then they were swallowed up. Houses, walls, complete buildings were taken away by the mud. Everything disappeared.
Heavy rain triggered mudslides that crashed into the city, carrying debris along the way. The water flow moved at 31 miles per hour and destroyed everything in its path. In total, it caused $3 billion in damages. Nearly 60 miles of coastline were hit or swallowed by roughly 10 feet of mud. Under the debris were remnants of what used to be Vargas, and thousands of corpses. Even more bodies were presumed to be swept out to sea. In a heartbreaking video, a father is seen buried up to his neck in mud and dirt, begging rescue workers not to save him. His reasoning? His daughters, who were buried beneath the wreckage, were still holding his hands. The true death toll is believed to be somewhere in the range of 10,000 to 30,000, with most of the bodies never recovered.
8 or 9 cities with 50,000, 60,000 inhabitants were completely destroyed. The only thing that is left are stones, sand, and rubble.
Following the tragedy, many people blamed Venezuela's then president, Hugo Chavez, for focusing more on his politics than on protecting the people. Initially, the country accepted aid from the United States, but that was short-lived. Chavez later declined any additional help from the US, with some under the impression that he was being swayed by Cuba's leader, Fidel Castro, who also sent aid to the country. To survive a landslide, you want to do whatever you can to get out of its way. Try to get to high ground, especially a solid structure, if possible. A roof is a good option, as long as the building is sturdy enough to withstand any flowing water or debris. If you are caught up in a landslide, curl into a ball and protect your head. Our final story isn't just a natural disaster, but is considered one of the most senseless acts of war in history. In 1938, during the Second Sino-Japanese War, the commander-in-chief of the National Revolutionary Army, Chiang Kai-shek, made a decision that would negatively impact the country for years to come. With Japanese forces advancing quickly and already controlling most of northern China, they seemed unstoppable. But Chiang devised a plan inspired by past military leaders: flood them out. He proposed opening the dikes along the Yellow River near Zhengzhou. The strategy was to use water as a substitute for soldiers by laying explosives to blow up the Jiaokou levee. But instead, due to complications, the Chinese army tunneled through the Yellow River's south bank, tipping the first domino in a disastrous chain of events. It worked, but at what cost? While the Japanese army was pushed back, hundreds of thousands of Chinese citizens lost their homes as water engulfed their land. Most areas along the Yellow River reached depths of 6.5 feet, and it didn't stop there. The water continued pushing on, flowing at 494,000 cubic feet per second. To put that into perspective, that's equivalent to filling 5 Olympic swimming pools every second. The resulting flood destroyed additional levees, covering more than 50,000 square miles with water. Although it's impossible to confirm, many experts believe the death toll lands close to 900,000, the majority being civilians. It took 10 years for the river to go back to its original state, but the agricultural and collateral damage left in its wake are still felt today. More than 90% of the villages in Henan's Fugo County were destroyed, and the thick silt deposits left behind from the flood made it impossible to grow crops for several years. It's been seen as one of the most harmful military decisions of all time, and hopefully, one that will never be repeated. When dealing with any flash flood, Your best survival strategy is to be prepared with essential survival items.
A case of water or bottles of water, some dry food that's going to last for a while, first aid kit, and like I said, the whistle, the cell phone charger, battery backup charger, and so forth. A weather radio would always be of good help as well.
Nowadays, flash floods are becoming more frequent and intense as the climate is changing. Fortunately, with advancements in technology and a focus on giving vulnerable communities ample notice of potential weather conditions, the loss of life during these catastrophic events can be reduced.
The drone is probably the most recently innovated tool that we can use, not only for spotting flash flooding before it occurs, but in terms of searching for people that are been caught in the flash flood or that are caught in their homes. The drone has been a tremendous piece of equipment.
And entrepreneurs like Behzad Rashidi, who created the Aquapack, are also working on helping to save lives. We hope the Aquapack hits the market soon. Stay tuned for our full interview with Behzad, where we go even deeper into flash flood survival. And remember, those who survive aren't the strongest, they're the ones who can adapt. We'll see you next time in another episode of How to Survive.